Greetings, my name is Timothy Halloran. I am a human incarnation, a speaker of sorts, discussing and sharing on some of the world's current themes, some of the collective experience. In these bi-weekly videos, we are discussing the nature of the times. Today is Monday, March 18th, 2019. And my goodness, these are some dense, rich, real times. There is so many layers that we can be processing, that we can be looking at. This is a time where we're going very deep. We're looking at the bottom of the barrel. We're looking at what goes far beneath the surface, and we're looking at who we are. What's the purpose of our life? What does it mean to be a human being? What is the purpose of our existence? And for many of us, there can be this exploration, this searching for where is that light at the end of the tunnel. And so I will do my very best to do justice for these times. Everything is reflecting everything in the midst of this Pisces season. There is a collective bleeding through, there is a collective interconnectivity, there is certainly synchronicity, dreams being processed. This world and our connection to it is really what we can be tapping into and exploring these weeks. So March began with Uranus entering the sign of Taurus, where Uranus is going to transit now through 2026. And Uranus being at the first degree of Taurus, particularly this whole month of March, can therefore bring up a tremendous amount of instability, or a feeling of instability, or a feeling of paranoia or anxiety. Of course, this can be a dynamic coupled with Mercury Retrograde in Pisces, but Uranus at the first degree of Taurus can be foreshadowing this next 8-year period to come, in which there are going to be many changes. How we're earning money, how we're finding stability, how we're finding space, how we're dealing with food, agriculture, global economics is going through these significant changes. And yet where exactly things are going, what exactly is going to change, can be considerably uncertain at this time. March is a thoroughly uncertain month. And as we discussed in the last video at the beginning of the month, the general theme for this Mercury retrograde beginning in Pisces is of surrender, letting go, not needing to have a total conceptual understanding of where exactly everything is going to go in total detail, because there is so much likely a propensity for change. We're surrendering to the unknown. We're surrendering to the tides of life, the tides of change. Now, Mercury just began his new cycle, coming into an inferior conjunction with the Sun on March 14th, and then squared Jupiter on the 15th. So these weeks, particularly the second half of March, we're really looking at our overall perspective of life. And it can be a time of resetting, going inside, self-reflection, reorienting ourselves to the whole is Pisces. It is like a total redirection of our overall compass, what our be-all, end-all dreams are, what our be-all, end-all goals are. And Neptune in Pisces has that feeling of completion, that feeling of perfection. It is that light at the end of the tunnel that we're always orienting our compass towards to continuously spiritually evolve by having a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves and something to give back to the whole, or a sense of vision, of communion with spirit or love, or what that may feel, what that may look like to us. What that vision, that conceptual understanding is, may be going through this reboot, this readjustment, in order to find and tune into that deeper essence of what that dream or goal is and make it real, make it practical. And again, there is a huge surrendering, letting go dynamic in this endeavor, because what it is that we previously imagined that dream, that goal, that end point to look like, it may not look exactly like that. And we're having to be flexible. We're having to be open to these different options, these different possibilities, in order to honor that dream, that essence, and make it real, even if it is a little slightly different than what we originally expected it to be, or if it looks or is conceptually a little bit more fuzzy right now. This is okay. We don't need to be certain of the next 30 years or what it's going to look like on the outside these weeks. It is more so of this inner incubation, this processing of all of these dimensions of ourselves, our desires, other people, their desires, our families, our work, our environments, and how we can bring all of these things together. Find those win-win solutions, but it does take time, patience, slowing down, and a great amount of creative flexibility, so to be innovative and discover those creative solutions that may be found on a different dimension that the problem was originally created on. So again, in general, what I recommend overall for this month of March is simply to allow ourselves that space and time to process all of the many layers of experiences, of dramas, of people that's going on, all the different dimensions in which these changes and this information is coming from. And in Pisces, we're talking about any and all dimensions there can be information coming from. There is a bleeding through quality with Pisces. There is a boundarylessness with Pisces where it can become very difficult to discern what I'm feeling or experiencing that's mine versus what I'm feeling and experiencing that's theirs versus what I'm feeling and experiences that's coming from the whole world or coming from the collective, or coming from the latest headline news story that's shaking up the world and creating all of these feelings and experiences simply through all of the world and all these other souls connected on that mystical, ethereal plane of the collective consciousness. We are more tuned into that collective consciousness. That collective consciousness is more on the surface, bleeding through our past lifetimes, our past life feelings and experiences, more on the surface, more bleeding through. And there's so much to process. We can be filled up by what we're feeling from the world, what we're feeling from other people. We can just have this experience of feeling like a wet mop or a filled up sponge. And we simply need to give ourselves that time and space to wring ourselves out. And as we're wringing ourselves out, all of these feelings, these weird thoughts, these weird experiences are going to come through, and simply allow ourselves that creative space to process. Almost like we are an artist experimenting with different colors and, what is this color and what's that color and where is it coming from and what happens if I mix them? Where is this raw, color coming from? What is this essence coming from? Allowing ourselves this experimental phase where we're almost playing with the fundamental materials of our makeup, of our life, to discover how to create this beautiful painting, this life that we want to live. But it's like we're getting to know the raw materials. That's Pisces. It's raw nature. It's quintessential human experience. Pisces is the dance, the essence of life itself, that has that very strange mystical feeling of beauty and sorrow and love and heartbreak and innocence, all smorgasborded together in this rich, tasty, but again, can be overwhelming experience of life and humanity. And as we're giving ourselves this space and time to process and discern, we are allowing ourselves to follow that trail of breadcrumbs that may be paranoia or maybe anxiety. This is going to be a common experience for this period, and I wish I emphasized this more negative side of things a little more in my last video, honestly. But I'm going to admit I'm having a hard time discerning my transits in the collective because of these transits. I'm going through my Saturn return these months. It's a considerably dark, heavy period for myself. And so I don't want to overemphasize that in the world, and yet this is also a dark, heavy period in the world. We have Pluto coming up to the Moon South Node the first week of April, Saturn coming up to the Moon South Node the first week of May. We are tuning into the bottom of the barrel in terms of human collective darkness. And this experience of anxiety or paranoia can certainly be a collective theme. And if we have that feeling like the world is ending, or we're going to make some massive mistake and simply lose everything, or we're going to be abandoned by God, we're going to be abandoned by spirit, or what if God and spirit were just a giant hallucination, a giant trick being played on us all along? Some of these deep, deep experiences can be coming up from some of the most mysterious and unknown parts of our own unconscious nature. Okay, and this is happening on the individual level as well as the collective level. Everything that's been swept under the rug from our childhood, from our past lives, from the last several centuries. Any feelings of what has led to loss or led to uncertainty. Some of these feelings can be coming up at this time because, again, this bleeding through period, which is not a forever period, by the way. This month of March is largely this uncertain, psychedelic, surreal, what can feel like a trip. And that Pisces trip, again, everything is interconnected. Oh my goodness, my karma and what I'm personally experiencing as darkness reflects my family's darkness, reflects my partner's struggles, reflects the world's struggles, reflects the human condition. Where man-made societies have been for thousands of years. Some of the things that may have gone off course that generated those experiences of aimlessness or loss or disconnection from our innocence are somewhat to be experienced and expected to come up right now. When we're dealing with these planets on the moon's south node, it's heavy. It's going to bring us down to these past themes. And again, it is almost like the ugly old face of patriarchy, the old oppressive regimes that our unconscious nature remembers, is rearing its old ugly face for us to see and address those themes in terms of what no longer works, what is no longer functioning. And this can be referred to us via the pain coming from our own soul. Yes, this is a period of great healing and cleansing the wound, and therefore feeling like we're being on the operation table or the dentist chair is not always the most comfortable place to be, but it serves a noble practical endeavor that we're having an operation done. We're seeing what no longer serves us that needs to be let go of at this time. And the bottom line theme can go back to societal conditioning, expectations, obligations coming from our world, the mass production, mass consumer society, what you're supposed to be and do in a female body, what you're supposed to be and do in a male body, those conditions that we were brought up and trained to do, what the world says we should be and do that is actually oppressive to our individual nature, to the sensitivities that we all embody, the divine feminine, our own inner child, our own inner feminine, our own inner creativity. In many respects, every person in some way, shape, or form has experienced oppression, has experienced conditioning that limits that natural, spontaneous, free-flowing innocence and creative expression that is the uniqueness of who we are. And because there is no one-size-fits-all, and because not everyone can fit the cookie-cutter machine that society expects us to fit, some of those feelings, some of that pain of our soul, being sick of it, having been there, having done that, having suffered through this, is reminding us of our truth, of our history, of our past, what no longer serves us, and is therefore needing to be let go. Now, Saturn and Pluto on the moon's south node in Capricorn, on Pluto and Saturn's own south nodes. I mean, this is such a poignant, such a powerful time. This time does not happen every so many lifetimes where there's such a collective upheaval, where there's so much transformation of fundamental structures. And again, this is largely going to play out in the coming years in global economy, agriculture, government structures, but also this deeper theme of addressing systemic oppression. Ending systemic oppression. So Saturn, Pluto on the moon's south node, does it make it easy to avoid or escape these issues? No, no, this is not a time that we can escape. This is not a time that we can avoid these issues. That's part of what can potentially generate some of the fears or anxiety around this period. We can't escape. If it feels heavy, if we feel depressed and we don't know why, we have to go in. We have to follow that trail of breadcrumbs to the roots, because trying to run or trying to avoid these things is going to increase that paranoia and anxiety. That paranoia and anxiety is drawing us to root issues. Is this the end of the world? Is this about to be another tragedy? No. But our bodies and our nervous system may remember the last time we experienced trauma, and there is this reminder that's almost like our own body's natural alert system. What changes can we make to end any repetitions of trauma, or over-sacrifice, or overextension, or being run over by the world and society's oppressive expectations? All of this healing is going to inevitably create a huge reaction from the collective, and that's what is needed. That's what we all probably deeply desire, is this change. So, for example, a quick historic reflection, all of this Chiron going on, the last new moon was quincunx Chiron, Mercury stationed right on Chiron, the next full moon coming up on the 20th, opposite to Chiron. Spring Equinox joined with Chiron. The last time Chiron was at the degree he's at now, the first degrees of Aries, was in the United States when Martin Luther King was assassinated. And just to get a little bit of historic context, in that time, there was so much racism and so much prejudice against femininity and other races and genders that were not white men, that there was no feeling that revolution or change may happen, right? There were people fighting for their rights, fighting for justice and equality, and then Martin Luther King was assassinated before a lot of these changes were really implemented, okay? That spurred a huge revolutionary period, inspired by some of that feeling of tragedy or loss or martyrdom. Well, this can be a period that has a similar theme and dynamic, but again, with that Pluto-Saturn South Node conjunction, there is also this looking at collective karma. What does karma mean? Cause and effect. Simply cause and effect. Humanity went in this direction, societies did this, there are consequences, okay? This is a very cut and dry, no bullshit time, okay? Saturn in Capricorn says it is what it is. This is what you're looking at. These are the resources you have. This is what you can do. These are the problems you're facing. These are the challenges you need to overcome. It's as cut and dry as this. But with these Chiron transits, there again can be this experience of this collective anxiety. We need to revolutionize our whole experience in the world, but also in the personal sphere, which we'll get to in just a minute. We'll try to bring this down a little bit to a more relatable level. But again, on the personal level, feeling some of these deep themes is reflective of where the whole world is at this time. And what we can be noticing is almost this collective block, individual block. Again, what's blocking that innocence, that spontaneity, that creativity to be our own unique individual and sensitive beings, right? Society does not necessarily acknowledge our unique sensitivity. Work 9 to 5 desk job, produce this amount. There's no one size fits all, okay? So we're needing to honor our bodies, our emotions, and our sensitivity to change fundamental structures so they are no longer oppressive to who we are. Okay, so let's get very, very real, because Saturn and Pluto are very real. And again, we're not able to escape this facet of life, of the human experience at this time. So what are some of these themes? How can we personally be experiencing these two players in our solar system? Well, with Saturn again, there is this theme of limitation. We cannot simply do whatever we dream. We have to be practical. We have to address reality, the three-dimensional world in which we are in. And so how some of this theme is brought up is through a healthy reminder of our own mortality. Saturn transiting through his own sign of Capricorn, 2017 through the beginning of 2020, can certainly bring up this theme of mortality. It's almost as if we're aging 20 years in these few short years. Absolutely, we can be even experiencing this on the physical level. I got cavities, I've never had cavities before, broken bones, never had broken bones before, white hairs, so on and so forth. And so there's these experiences. We all have a limited human experience. We have this amount of time. Okay? There can therefore be an experience of hopelessness. You know, I'm so many years old and I only have this much time left, and it's running out quickly, and what am I realistically going to do? Can be some of the experience that's coming up right now. Feeling disconnected from that spontaneous, innocent, spiritual part of ourself. It's like that window to the heavens may be a little bit more closed down at this time. And did I lose my innocence? Did I lose my creative center? No. It's simply that our consciousness is focused more on the three-dimensional, the surface level. What's happening in our world? What's happening in our world is where the action, is where the positive medicine and changes is being brought in. But because our consciousness is focused there, it may feel like we're a little bit more bound up, a little bit more limited. I'm stuck in my body and I have constant back pain, something that I'm familiar with, How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to be a creative, spontaneous person when I'm dealing with these real world issues? Okay? So this is part of that Saturn forced to look at these limitations, forced to look at oppression, what's too heavy for us, forced to address the human condition. But in so going through this trial, through going through this rite of passage, it pays off. This is when we get our structure together. This is when we measure our resources and we say we have this much. We can do these things, and so we can. This is going to initiate a highly revolutionary coming decade. Right now, we're measuring, we're planning, we're seeing what's needed to change. So we do have to roll up our sleeves here. We've got to get to business, but it does pay off in the long run. I like to give the quick analogy for Saturn being the mean high school math teacher that flunks us the whole dang year. We have to put so many hours of studying into his class. We do have to roll our sleeves. We do have to do hard work. But on that final day of school, when we're leaving that final exam classroom, that mean teacher gives us a funny look with a twinkle in his eye that says, "Don't you know I did all this for you? I wanted you to see how strong you are. I wanted you to see how much you could overcome. I wanted you to see how much of a powerful authority you can be in the world. And yes, you can catalyze change. And yes, you can build the reality you want to live in, even if it takes building that thing from the ground up. You're capable. You know how to do it. This is our strength building time." Okay? So if we have an experience of hopelessness, it does not mean that you're failing your meditation, you're failing being a spiritual practitioner, you're getting kicked out of heaven, you're forgotten by God. I personally see hopelessness and depression as being a season, and it's Saturn season, and it's a healthy season. Sometimes when we go through a period of hopelessness or depression, there is a incubating, a going inside, retreating our tentacles from the normal world duties, responsibilities to hit a reset button. It's a part of a creative process. Okay, the world's losing its flavor. Pretty dark, pretty gray, pretty a lot of work, no play. What do we need? What is our soul informing us from the inside out? What's not already out there in reality can come from this depression, incubation, resetting phase. So we can tune into our inner vision and hit this reset button from the inside out. Okay? So, this is a period where our faith can be tested. Saturn's job, he builds our faith. He makes us stronger spiritual souls. We do have to roll up our sleeves and not give in to the drive, the voice to give up. That it all goes to shit anyways. That it will be the end of the world. That all we know is slavery and wars and pain, and it's all it ever is going to be. No, we cannot let that take us over and drag us to the lowest level of hell. And even if we do, it's not the end of the world. We can pick ourselves up from that lowest level of hell. Sometimes we have to go through a period of hopelessness to go through the experience of the sun, the dawn, the coming light does rise again. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And wherever that ray of hope is coming from, however small that rip in the veil, however small that crevice is letting that ray of hope in, that's where we must stand. That's where we must hold ourselves. That ray of hope, that light at the end of the tunnel, will lead us clean to the other end. So now that we've been covering the overall, the big, deep themes for this year and these months, let's roll it back and get into what's going on these few days. Because yes, there can be a growing sense of that ray of hope widening. That light at the end of the tunnel can lead us through clean to the other end. And we have the Spring Equinox coming up on March 20th, paired with a full moon just several hours after that equinox point. And so the spring equinox is when the sun's incoming rays is aligned with that magical line known as the equator. We have even day and night. And this is the moment that the sun enters the sign of Aries, because the tropical zodiac is not based off of the constellation. It is based off of the natural rhythms and cycles of the sun and earth. Well, the spring equinox is the astrological new year. It is a period of new beginnings, and we can begin ourselves anew at this time. It is spring cleaning. It is a fresh start. This is a cleansing full moon. Again, this full moon at the 1st degree of Libra, opposite to Chiron. And this light at the end of the tunnel, this equinox, it can be coming in a little bit bumpy. You know, it's like the plane hitting the runway, and there's a little bit of bumpiness. This full moon is quincunx to Uranus. What this new beginning is, what this light at the end of the tunnel is leading us into, may not be totally conceptually known at this time. This is okay. It is like breaking in a new pair of pants, new pair of shoes. See what fits, see what feels fresh, see what is holding that light at the end of the tunnel. This is what can lead us into a building momentum, a building direction, and yes, we will pull out of this fogginess, this uncertainty that has summarized the month of March, in particular when we have our new moon at the beginning of April, April 5th. There will be this beginning of a new cycle, beginning of a new direction. But this is Aries season, okay? New directions, new energy, growing momentum. Okay. Chiron can join this equinox. Chiron in Aries, the next near decade, has an overall theme of healing our confidence to be our unique selves and honor our own direction through life, to honor our own desires. This is what I want to do in the world. I'm not going to wait for other people to give me permission to do it. I know this is needed. I know this is who I am. Chiron in Aries is going to initiate the pioneers, the way pavers, the path clearers, the path openers. It's going to heal the confidence to go where no man or woman dares to go, okay? Chiron in Aries can therefore be cleansing out the distractions, the interferences, the inadequacies, or the fears that gets in the way of that confidence. And this full moon at the 1st degree of Libra is going to bring this healing to us largely through the reflection of relationship, okay? Full moon, 1st degree of Libra, opposite to Chiron, healing through the reflection to others, okay? Other people are going to bring up the self-other dynamic. This is about healing who we are as individuals, so that way we can function equally, harmoniously, fairly with others, where we can mutually support one another without sacrificing our own individual needs and desires, okay? And we're doing a lot of seesawing back and forth, self-other, giving to other, I need to be free. And we're finding out how to be free, how to be spaciousness in our relationships rather than free from them, all right? So a lot of healing in relationships with this full moon, but the mirror of the other can also bring up dynamics of, how can we bring in more justice, more equality? And here's the point. On the day of this full moon's in Libra, sun's in Aries, the rulers of this full moon, sun's in Aries, ruled by Mars, moon's in Libra, ruled by Venus. Venus and Mars are squaring one another the day of this full moon. Venus at 23 degrees Aquarius, squaring Mars at 23 Taurus. This is a creative tension that is inviting new dynamics of relating. And it can bring up a huge amount of restlessness, ambition. Let's get there. Let's do this. Let's be free. Let's create new lives. Again, how to be ourselves and how to be free. How to meet our own needs and how to share freely with others. So this Venus in Aquarius wants to be free, wants to push on boundaries, wants to discover, invent, and revolutionize new ways of relating to others, new ways of channeling and handling our own sexuality, new ways of handling and channeling our own creative energy, because the creative sexual energy go hand in hand together. And that can involve a defying of how we've known to do relationship, family, expectation work in the past. This third quarter square, Venus to Mars, wants to bring in new ways of sexuality, creativity, relationship that may not already exist in the world, and therefore brings up a creative challenge, how to bring in something fundamentally new. And when I mean new, I mean new. It's not what we see other people doing, because we have to honor our own unique body, Mars and Taurus, our own unique pace, Taurus, our own unique way of relating to our own sexual energy and enjoying our bodies and enjoying pleasure. There is no one size fits all. There's no one uniform sexuality. There's no expected way to do relationship. But are we taught that very much in our world, in our culture, where prince and princess live happily ever after in the Walt Disney fantasy castle? No, this requires a huge amount of innovation as well as willingness to experiment, willingness to push on these boundaries and defy these social traditions or conventions that in fact limit us, that oppress us or cripple us, and where we can be feeling a lot of this change and friction taking place is even in the experience, the feeling of guilt or inadequacy. You know, our relationship, our family, my work, my creative venture is not totally perfect yet. And I know it could be better. But even in changing these things, I'm going to upset my boss, or I'm going to upset my partner, or I'm going to upset my family or my parents. It's not what they're used to. It's not what they expect. It's going against the grain. It's going against convention. How are we going to actually make this happen? Some of the guilt or the inadequacy coming up from these experiences is in fact the old fears, the old wounds that's being cleansed out. And again, this can happen through the mirror of relationship. Relationship reflecting back. It's not totally perfect yet. I care about the other person. I don't want to shut them down. I don't want to shut myself down either. How can we find resolution? How can we find peace? Diplomacy, equality, justice, all things Libra is what this full moon in Libra is going to illuminate and give us a key into. So we can address these issues, tie up any loose ends, and at the very least experiment in new ways of doing things that may in fact bring in more equanimity, more justice, more peace, more spaciousness, more harmony inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. This goes full circle back to that Uranus and Taurus transit kicking off our month of March. There is this opportunity and this anticipation of change that can actually work out well through a simplification, through a reductionist. We may find stability in ways easier or simpler than we've even been led to believe are possible in our current day and age. And again, we're addressing a collective block, global economic governmental shifts. And a part of this reductionist and simplification phase can again provide more abundance, more stability through making things easier, more self-resourceful, more sovereign. Okay, so that's a part of the experiment. How can we simplify? How can we find these easy solutions that may even be simpler, easier than we known as possible? Because our world has seriously overcomplicated things in this day and age. For example, in regards to abundance, there's this standard of success. When I achieve that standard of success, then I will be safe. And then we enter the workforce, and that rung of the ladder of what success is or means keeps getting set higher and higher and higher. That standard of success keeps getting higher and higher and higher, and we never feel successful and we never feel stable. Roll that rung of the ladder back. Reduce that high bar, that high standard. Make your life easier. Give yourself more space and time in ways that may be simple and easy. And then that extra space and time gets filled with new creative solutions to do things differently that may even improve our lives in ways easier than we known was possible. There's a beautiful signature with this full moon in a grand trine with Mars and Taurus and Pluto on the south node. Yes, we have to put a great degree of effort into making these changes, but in putting this effort, it can really pay off in anchoring new values, new ways of doing things, and anchoring them into practical form and function. Okay? So again, a summary of all these transits, it's like this layer after layer of processing, going deeper, reconnecting with our innocence, reevaluating our dreams and our goals, even allowing this past life bleed through our literal dreams, allowing all this processing to come layer after layer to inform us of our deeper truth, our deeper story. So to identify what gets in the way of that deeper truth and story. It's like we are in our own consciousness feeling this collective block, right? And we just want to be on the other side, and we can feel so frustrated and so exhausted that we keep coming up against this wall. But that light at the end of the tunnel may be something trickling around the sides, something starting to bleed through this collective block. And as more starts to move through and new creative solutions starts to come through, that collective cork is going to pop off. All that gets in the way of our creative, sexual, pioneering genius, all that gets in the way of our natural human evolution on an individual level, on a collective level, is being addressed to remove those blocks in the way of our innocence, freedom, privacy, and space. Okay? So there can be an experience of a building tension, right? It's almost like a shaken up soda that's about to uncork and pop that thing off. That tension, as uncomfortable as it may be these weeks, in fact, is serving us. That tension is the jet fuel that is going to propel us up and out. It is like the wheels of the train are turning, and that train is beginning to exit the station. New moon in Aries, April 4th. New energy, great momentum, physical endurance will continue to come in through the beginning of April. So be slow, be easy on yourself. Allow yourself for these deep and real feelings to be processed. It will pay off in the long term. So please do slow down and take care. Wishing absolutely all the best to yourself and your beloveds. Please do take care.